How did life change when America went to war?
Well, we didn't have the freedom to go buy at the stores. We had to have sugar coupons and shoe coupons and stuff like that, you know. And in Galveston, we had to pull the shades down on the south side of the house, and if we opened the door, we had to turn the light before we went out when the war started, so that the light wouldn't reflect. And submarines of the German nature, Japanese nature, couldn't see light ships silhouetted between where they were and where the shoreline and all the oil facilities in this area. So you couldn't have any lights that shone to the south side because it lit up the sky and they could see a ship outlined.
Did you feel any? Was anybody different towards you since your last name was Schmidt, and there was a German last name?
Well, no, not really. There was a few comments on the Jockish family, who were the ambassadors from Germany, but the Jockish family had lived in Galveston forever, but they were the counselor, and I knew their grown children personally. And so you had a few outstanding and people that wanted to be important, and they kind of dug at you because your name was Schmidt. And of course my dad's name was Flournoy Frederick Schmidt, which was really German, and my name was Bertha Schmidt, which was really German. And the kids kind of made digs and jokes about it, but actually I don't think it was really a problem.
Tell us some of the stories of Granddaddy. What did he do in the war?
Well, Granddaddy was drafted, and he went into San Antonio to be briefed, and then he was sent to Fort Benning, Georgia. And since he's 6'3", they put him in the little tanks, which he had to kind of fold himself up when he got into them. But they placed him, and he became a tank driver for the little tanks, and they went on all their excursions and everything and tryouts in the hills of Georgia outside of Fort Benning. And evidently he was very trustworthy, and he became the clerk for the outfit. And I didn't know till after the war was over that he had been chosen to listen in to the other fellows in his group and other groups and send a weekly report to some P.O. box number and report if there was any of the soldiers talking against the United States or sympathizing with the German-Japanese area or not. But he did this all during the war. He had to report to somebody, just at a post office, to make sure there wasn't anybody in his outfit that was leaning toward the other side and talking down the American thing. And of course, who of us knew that we had a spy in our own army to check out people that might be subversive?
Did a lot of people back then have men or women that were helping out with the service?
I think everybody was a volunteer in a way. I mean, everybody wanted to help, and it didn't matter whether you helped just go to the USO or make cakes and pack them up in a box and take them to the USO to send to the servicemen. And if you went to a church, you always invited the servicemen to come home with you and have lunch or something. And maybe in a dating age with girls and boys, well, you dated boys you never knew and never would know again, possibly. And but you just wanted to be good and make them feel at home. And they took the Galvez Hotel over and made it a Coast Guard barracks building. And we had a lot of soldiers that lived there. That hotel ceased to be a hotel, but it started to be a Coast Guard Navy place to live. And I lived between there and the ship, and so I met some of the fellas and did date a boy from Kansas at that time that was really nice. But since I was dating somebody in Galveston, it really was just a friendly thing, you know.
Well, who else did you know firsthand that experienced World War II firsthand, like
My
Granddaddy?
brother went to Hawaii, was joined. He had an eye problem. They didn't take him at first, and then as the war droned on and on and on, they took him and put him in, I guess you'd call it the 4F group, which was 4F was kind of a dirty word because you didn't feel like they were doing their part. But they did take him into the Air Corps, and he could not see without his glasses to read. And he was sent to the Hawaiian Islands, and one of the remote, I think the big island of Hawaii, but he was sent to an outpost out in the area that even still today is still a part of the Army thing, but it's an area. I was over there and they showed us where it was, but he was over there the whole time of the war, and they worked with sending messages and stuff like that, watching for the enemy and that sort of thing. So he served his time and got out after, like everybody else did. And of course, everybody you knew you went to school with went into the service. The thing about it in Galveston was you had Todd Shipyard. And a lot of big, able football players in high school worked for Todd Shipyard. And some of us felt like they didn't quite do their duty because they got, what is it, you get a deferment because you worked for the shipyard. And those guys were over there drawing down the money. They worked double time weekends, and they got double pay for all that. And here were your servicemen, and most of the guys were getting whatever they got. I think at one time we got $75 because we were married later on, and we had a baby, and so we got $75, which was a lot of money. But for a sergeant or something like that with the allotments, that's what we got. But of course, when we had the baby, we went to the hospital, and somehow the government picked up. You went through their program, and they picked up the cost for a lot of your expense there.
How did y'all find out the news of what was going on during World War II?
The war that happened. Well, the German war kind of went on and on and on, and it seemed like we just kind of vaguely went into the German thing. But the Japanese thing was a real sudden thing. And I can remember my in-laws at that time. I don't think we were married. We weren't married at that time, but we were riding down on the Bay area of Galveston with his folks and his little brother and sister. And we saw people grouping around on the street, and we wondered, why are all these people standing in a group? And some of them had radios and things like that. And so we stopped and asked them what was going on, because all these little groups, and they told us Japan had bombed the Hawaiian Islands. And I said, of course, we went home and turned on the radio and we listened, and that's how we found out about it.
Did you get most of your information from the radio or the newspaper or newsreels? Or
mostly the radio, and then we picked up with the movies had shorts in, scenes, but mainly the radio. We didn't have TV, so we didn't have that avenue.
If there's anything you would tell 15-year-old boys today about World War II, what would it be, Granny B?
A 15-year-old boy.
15-year-old boy.
You need to love your country and be ready to help and serve and learn what you're doing, so you can, if the time ever comes that you have to go into the service, that you can do a good job, because without your education you're not going to be able to really be of service to your country like you would be if you're educated. And go in there and be patriotic, because this is the place to live. You don't know what it's going to be like if you lose your freedom.